Hi there, it's Lucas again. I hope you didn't wait too long for the next episode of my story. I know I left you at such a painful cliffhanger. But before anything else, don't forget to subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up, and hit that notification bell icon to show your support for me. When Joanne's phone rang before she could answer my thousands of questions about the revelation she just dropped on me, I was left in a nail-biting cliffhanger too. Luckily for me, I only had to wait a few seconds, as her phone call ended abruptly. "Sales call," said Joanne, as she chucked her phone behind her in annoyance. "Happens to the best of us," I said, shrugging my shoulders. "Where were we?" she asked. "I have some burning questions about the fact that you just said something about my real dad. What are you on about? You were at my dad's funeral," I said. "Okay, I guess I'm gonna have to explain everything then," said Joanne. "Those two weren't your parents. They were agents working for us to keep you safe and out of harm's way. Why, you ask? Because your real father was a very influential, very dangerous international super spy. And when you're that guy, you make a lot of powerful enemies. His one mistake was having you, if you ask me. I told him never to get tangled up in love and children." "Wow, thanks," I said dryly. "Super spy? What is this, some kids movie? Let's say anything you're telling me is true. What happened to my mother?" "Dead," said Joanne, as she checked her fingernails. "Collateral damage, just like I told him she would be. That's why he decided to hide you. Tuck you away in nowhere land so his enemies would never find you. Unfortunately, he went and got himself disappeared a couple months ago. And somehow, his enemies figured out you existed. Hence, that's why they killed my parents," I said, catching up with what Joanne was trying to say. "Not your parents. They were agents, McGregor and Claremont," Joanne corrected me. "I didn't even know their real names," I whispered. "This isn't really a modeling agency," said Joanne. "Yeah, I figured. You stand in the headquarters of Odin, the Organization of Democratic Intelligence Networks. It was founded by your father, and for many years, he was our top agent before he retired to focus on running the whole operation. He knew this life was dangerous, and so he knew there would come a time when his enemies would finally catch up to him. And so he left instructions that if he were to ever meet an unexpected end, we were to extract you and safeguard your life and the future of the organization by naming you head of the company. Of course, he instructed that we go on this charade of pretending that this was a modeling agency until you were old enough to inherit it. But, well, here we are. You figured us out," said Joanne. "I didn't figure anything out. You just told me. After the smallest bit of prodding. Wow. For a spy, you really do give up secrets quickly," I told Joanne. "I'm not a spy. I only do the payroll," replied Joanne. "Oh, and I'm acting CEO, of course." "So, where's my dad?" I asked. "Have you not been listening, child? He disappeared. That means we don't know what happened to him. He could be dead for all we know." Joanne looked up at the ceiling as if she was trying to figure something out. And then she looked back at me and said, "Statistically speaking, it's more likely he's dead." "So, what happens now?" I asked. "This," said Joanne as she clapped her hands twice. Immediately, futuristic hidden doors hissed open on the walls, and three ladies, all in tight fighting clothes, came out. One began taking my measurements while the other took down notes. The third one took out pieces of cloth and began to match what looked best with my skin. I would have felt very awkward, as I've never had any girl that close to me. Much less three. But it was over so quick. By the time I even began to feel a blush coming on, they were already out the door. Then Marcus and Joanne led me to an adjoining room. I was going to make a comment about how Marcus smelled strongly of garlic that day, but then I got distracted. There were all kinds of weapons and gadgets. But curiously enough, there was an entire wall dedicated to nothing but leather shoes. When I saw what looked to be a really cool pair of VR goggles, I went straight for them and began to put them on. "What are these?" I said. Joanne slapped my hands and took the goggles away. "These control a stealth aircraft we use for aerial assaults. It is not a toy," she exclaimed. "Sorry," I said. "But what exactly is happening? You still haven't told me." "If you still haven't caught on, then that tells me you are going to need intensive training," said Joanne with disappointment. "We have no choice. This is what your father wanted. Now you have to lead the organization. And to do that, you need to follow in his footsteps." "By that, you mean—" I began to say. "Ah," said Joanne. "Now you're catching on. It seems you learned quickly, at the very least." The next few months felt like it went by in an instant. The amount of things I had to do piled up. I found myself wishing for my boring, ordinary life back. I even felt like I'd give up anything to be in high school again. Days upon days of endless lessons on spycraft felt like a never-ending history class. And then, what followed was practical training. The ladies who worked at the agency taught me how to handle all sorts of weapons. Hand pistols, bow and arrows, knives, swords, rifles, batons, even an umbrella. You name it. I learned how to use it in a fight. By week 4, I felt like my body was about to give in. But it didn't stop. They trained me in different schools of martial arts. Krav Maga, Kali, Kung Fu, Judo, Muay Thai. I learned how to disable an attacker with just one knuckle bone. Marcus was a great sparring partner, but it kinda made me uncomfortable how he had this strong aroma of garlic around him when he got too close. So I ended up sparring with the female agents. They were better at fighting, anyway. And when I got better and I finally managed to overpower one of the girls who sparred with me, I began to finally get into it. I devoured every book on spies and espionage I could find in the massive library. I put my back into sparring and putting my spycraft into practice with the other agents who worked with me. Even when I'd finished my lessons for the day, I would go up to the roof and practice or read on my own. By the end of it all, I was easily beating anyone at martial arts. And I had retained all the knowledge I had gotten from my books. They weren't going to just take my word for it, though. Joanne organized a series of tests for me to undergo. The written exam I finished with ease. The weapons and martial arts tests were a breeze as well. But when she sent me on a mock mission to find out who had been eating her lunches that she keeps stored in the cafeteria fridge, it took me days of staking out. I even stayed up all night a few times just on the off chance that the lunch thief would make the mistake of thinking I wouldn't go to those lengths. But no dice. I had eye bags bigger than an actual bag by the 3rd day. I thought Joanne was going to call the whole thing off. I thought she was going to fail me. Until one day, as Marcus and I were in Joanne's office, I remembered her having mentioned in passing how much she liked putting garlic in everything. And that was when it all clicked. "It's him! It's Marcus!" I exclaimed out of nowhere, pointing at the culprit. Joanne looked at me with pride. "Great observation skills," she said. "You remembered that small detail. You took a while, but you got there in the end. And to think, you were given that clue months ago. Good job. You passed. You've earned your gadgets." That was when Joanne showed me into the nondescript gadget room behind her office. Long display cases filled with everyday objects that turned into weapons dominated the room. A slender lady showed up and said, "Choose 3. Only 3? I thought. Where's the budget? Don't I get to know what they do at least? I asked. "The wand chooses the wizard," the lady in the lab coat said. "Choose the ones that speak to you." I ended up choosing a net gun. It does exactly as the name suggests. It's a gun that throws nets. I figured it would be good for catching people alive. The next gadget was a set of metal playing cards with sharp edges I could use as throwing stars. And then there was the dragonfly. It was a drone made to look realistically like the insect, and it could take 4K videos and high-quality audio. Perfect for surveillance and recon. Then Joanne handed me a pen. What's this? I asked. This is a gift. It shoots pressurized carbon dioxide into anything. Don't ask. But only use it in dire circumstances. Only in an emergency, she cautioned. Well, that's cheerful, I remarked. The 3 ladies who measured me months ago appeared and dressed me up in a perfectly fitted suit. And then they brought in a mirror. Man, I looked good. Woven Kevlar in the lining. Now you're mostly bulletproof, said Joanne. So, what remains is the matter of your code name. I get a code name? I exclaimed. Cool! Marcus, what was that thing you called me when I first got here? Falcon? Said Marcus. Yeah, I'm Falcon, I said, beaming proud of my cool code name. Not happening, said Joanne, checking her fingernails again. We name our agents based on the town they originally hail from. What was that name of the town you grew up in again? I began to turn red out of embarrassment. Butternuts, I said. Joanne and Marcus tried to hide their laughter, but they weren't successful. Then, you are Agent Butternuts, said Joanne. That's not great, I remarked. Them's the rules, she replied. I let them have their fun. Once I'm fully inducted as the head of the agency, there's no way that stupid rule wasn't gonna be the first thing I changed. Soon enough, I'll be Agent Falcon, I thought. As I looked at myself in the mirror, all dapper and armed to the teeth with hidden gadgets and weapons, I began to picture myself as the spy they wanted me to be. And then Joanne put her hand on my shoulder. She adjusted my tie so that it fit perfectly against my perfectly ironed shirt. As she looked at my reflection in the mirror, she told me, Your first mission? Find your missing father.